Howdy. Now, let's be honest. It is Tuesday, right after you've just finished up the holidays, and here you are out of school. That's a big deal, isn't it? You happy about that today? All right, that's what I thought. All right. We got Somerville in the house today. Is that right? Somerville, where are you? All right. Brenham in the house today. Where's Brenham? My goodness. Awesome. Nice little showing today from Brenham. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and this is a really big day in the life of this library, and hopefully one that you'll remember for a long time. Welcome to the 7th Annual Reading Discovery Distance Learning Program and Video Conference. It's a program of the Education Department of the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum, which is part of the National Archives and Records Administration. I'm going to be working as your moderator today. It's my privilege to be part of this program for several years now. My name is Mike Wright, and I'm with KBTX. I'm the general manager there of the CBS affiliate locally, and it's an honor to work with Mrs. Bush and the foundation on this project each year. Our purpose is to promote reading activities to help you develop self-confidence as readers. That is one of the most important things you can do, and I can tell you, it was not that long ago. Your parents and your teachers will attest to this. But right now you're at an age where people will tell you it is very important to read, and you're like, yeah, I get that. Later in life, you will understand what someone is helping you to do now. So when your teachers encourage you to read and to do so often, you don't have to do it only when they tell you to do it. You can do it at any time, and that's what today's program is to do. We do encourage you to increase your reading fun with reading partners, and that may include parents, grandparents, friends. You may choose to read to your pets, stuffed toys, whatever it is, to learn your vocabulary. It's important that you read. We appreciate the help of our program sponsors today. We acknowledge Annette Brown, who is chair of the Junior League of Bryan College Station, Bush Library Committee. Annette, thanks for being here. Also to Fred McClure, Chief Executive Officer of the George Bush Presidential Library Foundation. Fred? We also thank the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy as well, and they are represented here today. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Tuesday. We'd like to say thank you to the 2014 Partners School Administrators for your leadership. As we show our appreciation for them, we ask that you would hold your applause until all are standing, and please remain standing until the list is completed. It's not a long one. From the Somerville ISD, Superintendent is Charles Camarillo, Dr. Sandra Labby, the Principal of Somerville Elementary. With Brenham ISD, Superintendent is Sam Bell, and Mrs. Peggy Still, the principal of Brenham Middle School. Now please give them a big round of applause. We also say thanks to all of the distance learning specialists that are making our national and international connections today. I have to tell you, you're a part of history. I have personally witnessed this program growing year to year, and you're going to be shocked at who is part of this program today, so listen carefully. The connections start a little local, a little regional in nature. Region 11's Lori Ham-Necker at Connect to Texas. Tony Hockenberry of Texas A&M University's Trans-Texas Video Conference Network. Timothy Foreman in Quebec, Canada. Monsieur Silvio Fantini and Madame Sylvie Malecki in Douai, France. Our sincere thank you to the French Diplomatic Education Cooperation Program officers, specifically Lauriane Blondel, Deputy Cultural Attaché, Consulate General of France in Houston, Texas, and Céline Jobet, the Educational Affairs Program Officer, Embassy of France in the United States, Washington, D.C. Also, for their significant help, we thank Lee Bentley Castillo, the manager of the Texas Education Telecommunications Network, Marcy Powell, the global director of Polycom, and Laurie Hogel, who's the coordinator for telecommunications and distance learning at Connect to Texas. The 2014 Reading Discovery Program today has over 55,000 readers who are participating across the United States, Texas, and worldwide. So they are being able to see you on television by video conferencing. So to the 55,000 readers participating from across the United States and the world, we say a big howdy and a welcome from Texas A&M University, the home of the Aggies. A big applause for those that are joining us over the network. Altogether today, there are students and teachers in 32 states. That is a new record, as well as participants abroad in Quebec, Canada, and Douai, France. This year's theme covers the history of the Statue of Liberty. It was a gift of the French people to the American people. It's a remarkable story taking place in the 1800s of an idea developed and the Statue of Liberty created, which demonstrated international friendship between the countries, collaboration, and our nations who mutually shared values of liberty, freedom, and opportunity. It's wonderful to have with us a return visitor to this program, Mr. Len Curley, who is an author and artist here. He's written and illustrated magnificently the 2014 Reading Discovery Award-winning book, Liberty, comes to us from Palm Springs, California, and he is our guest host. Please make welcome Mr. Len Curley. Len? Welcome back. And at this time, it is now a great privilege and a pleasure to introduce who she will downplay this as the star of the show. Recently, I think most of you were probably following a few health-related things, like many of us in the great state of Texas. Allergies get in the way and other things happen, but she would not miss this program. And joining us by teleconference today, so as not to take a risk being contagious to anyone today, please make welcome First Lady Barbara Bush. She will be joining us by teleconference in just a moment from right now. Mrs. Bush's #1 cause is family literacy, and she is also a best-selling author. There are 3 groups of reading partners today who will read selections from Liberty. First, we have Garrison, Cabrini, and Gabby, reading partners in the 6th grade from Somerville Elementary School, the Somerville Independent School District. Garrison, Cabrini, and Gabby.
My name is Garrison, and this is Cabrini and Gabby. Our teachers are Miss Edelman, Miss Coronado, Miss Timmons, Miss Burka, and Miss Ross. Our librarian is Miss Blinka. One of the most prominent French patriots was Edward de Laboulaye, a famous law professor and expert on American history. It was in 1865, during a dinner party at his home near Versailles, that Laboulaye first proposed that a monument be built in America as a memorial to their independence, by a united effort, the common work of both nations. One of the dinner guests that evening was a 31-year-old sculptor named Auguste Bartholdi. The young man was gripped at once by this idea. He said later that it became fixed in his mind. It was to become his obsession. Young Bartholdi was attracted to a heroic, monumental kind of art, in which lofty ideals are symbolized by figures inspired by the sculpture of ancient Greece and Rome.
In 1871, conditions finally seemed right for a French republic. Professor Laboulaye was convinced that a Statue of Liberty would help rally the French people. At this time, Bartholdi decided to pursue his American project head on. He left France armed with letters of introduction from Professor Laboulaye to many prominent Americans. His ship sailed into New York Harbor at dawn on June 21, 1871. As his ship approached Manhattan, Bartholdi turned his attention to Bedloe's Island, a small island guarded by the walls of an old fortress. At his very first sight of America, Bartholdi had found what he wanted, the perfect place to build his vision of liberty. He later said, "At the view of the harbor, the definite plan was first clear to my eyes. Here, my statue must rise. Here, where people get their first view of the new world." It would take 15 years more to turn his vision into reality.
Although he had a basic idea for liberty and had started sketching and modeling before his American trip, the experience of New York Harbor and the sight of Bedloe's Island had focused Bartholdi's creative energy. Over the next 3 months, he made a series of large terracotta models, gradually refining his design. Early in 1875, he finished his final terracotta model. Nearly 5 feet tall, this was the model from which Liberty's proportions would be taken. In 1875, Professor Laboulaye had set up the French-American Union, an organization to raise funds for the project. The French-American Union held a lottery with prizes donated by prosperous French businesses. On July 7, 1880, it was announced that enough money had been raised to complete the statue, which cost $600,000 in 1880 dollars.
Thank you. Garrison, Cabrini, and Gabby. Up next, let's listen to reading partners from Brenham Middle School of the Brenham ISD. How about those Cubs this year? Was that a big year or what? Wow. Please make welcome from Brenham, Pierce, Lily, and Taylor.
My name is Pierce, and this is Lily and Taylor. We are in 6th grade. Our reading teachers are Miss Grody, Miss Sherrard, Miss Albrecht Allen, Miss Friday, and Miss Rooker. Miss Tackett works in our library. Artist and sculptor Bartoli began the greatest challenge of his life, building a hollow metal statue more than 150 feet tall. He decided to make his immense statue from copper since it was cheaper and lighter to shape. Creating Liberty was a very complex process involving many different artisans and craftsmen, sculptors, plasterers, carpenters, and metalsmiths. The first step was to enlarge the final terracotta model. Due to the immense scale for the final enlargement, the 38-foot model was divided into segments, each of which was then enlarged to be 4 times bigger than the last. The finished statue would be made up of more than 350 segments held together by more than 600,000 rivets. 20 craftsmen labored 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, for months to prepare the arm and torch in time for the Philadelphia Exposition in May 1876. It became one of the exposition's great attractions.
On February 22, 1877, Congress voted to accept Liberty Enlightening the World as a gift from France, and to provide the site as well as funds for maintenance. In addition, a proper pedestal was needed for the gigantic statue, so the American Committee for the Statue of Liberty was formed to raise the money and engage an architect. Without some kind of internal support, the Liberty's construction would simply collapse. Early in 1880, Bartoli approached French engineer A.G. Eiffel and asked him to tackle the problem. Eiffel was one of the great geniuses in the history of engineering. Gradually, over the next 2 years, the gigantic figure of Liberty took shape. By February 1884, Bartoli was able to write to the American Committee that our statue is completed.
But the American Committee had run out of money and construction was halted on the pedestal. Liberty's cause was taken up by Joseph Pulitzer, owner of the World, one of New York's daily newspapers. In March, Pulitzer ran a series of editorials appealing directly to the common man to contribute. Give something, however little. We will publish the name of every giver, however small the sum given. And money began flowing in. Then in August, the World ran a bold headline, $100,000 triumphant completion of the World's fund for the Liberty pedestal. In 5 months, 121,000 people had contributed $102,000. Working men and women, the elderly, the poor, immigrants, and children sent their dollars and their pennies. Pulitzer published every name. Now Liberty truly belonged to the American people.
Thank you to Pierce, Lily, and Taylor. And our final reading partners, Brenham ISD, Brandon and Casey.
Hi, my name is Brandon and this is Casey. We are in 5th grade. Our reading teachers are Ms. Brunton, Ms. Gatner, Ms. Denisi, Ms. Olson, and Ms. Sheffer. Finally, the last rivet was driven into place. The Statue of Liberty was finished at last, 21 years after the idea was suggested. On dedication day, October 28, 1886, the New York City streets were thronged with people and the harbor filled with ships and pleasure boats. After a festive parade down 5th Avenue A naval possession ferried the official party to Bedlos Island for the dedication ceremony. The President of the United States, Grover Cleveland, said to sculptor Bartoli, "You are the greatest man in America today." The honor of unveiling Liberty's face went to Bartoli, who simply said, "The dream of my life is accomplished." As a symbol of an idea, liberty enlightening the world is grand and inspiring. The Frenchmen who made her were expressing the conviction that personal freedom is best achieved through a democratic form of government.
In 1883, a young woman named Emma Lazarus had written a poem for a New York literary auction to raise pedestal funding. Inspired by the plight of Russian immigrants who fled to America to escape terrible persecution, her poem gives a heart, soul, and voice to the Statue of Liberty. It is called The New Colossus. Here at our sea-washed, sunset gate shall stand, a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand flows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command. The air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame, keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Here, the Statue of Liberty's full meaning is expressed, that America, the home of the free, is the haven of the oppressed.
Thank you to Brandon and Casey. Through this video teleconferencing, there are a number of pauses, and sometimes if the microphones pick up noise, it will transfer back to us. And I believe that we have First Lady Barbara Bush with us at this moment, now established with connection. And Mrs. Bush, we will now turn it over to you for the reading, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm so sorry I can't be there today. But this wonderful readers, I'm so proud of all of you, and I really rather have read first so you wouldn't compare me to the great readers. But here we go. The Great Lady was constructed more than 100 years ago. Made of iron and copper, she once gleamed reddish-brown like a new penny. Decades of sun, wind, rain, and ice have turned her surface a flat, streaky, pale green, the rich patina that copper acquires over time. She is the most colossal metal statue ever made. Over the course of a century, she has become perhaps the most famous and beloved sculpture in the world. She began as a symbol of an idea. Her creators gave her the title, Liberty Enlightening the World. But later, a young poet gave her another name, one less grand, but more human and personal, Mother of Exiles. She faces east toward the old world and welcomes all who enter New York, the New York Harbor, gateway to the new world. For generations, they have come seeking a better way of life, seeking freedom. She represents this freedom. For people all over the world, the Statue of Liberty is the symbol of America. America's symbol is French. The idea of a French professor, the Statue of Liberty was designed by a French sculptor and a French engineer. It was fabricated by French craftsmen and paid for by the French people, contributions of the French people. She was a gift from all the people of France to the people of the United States. Liberty was a monument to the first 100 years of American independence and a gesture of friendship between two nations. At the age of 100, as part of the July 4th celebration, she was honored with a gala celebration and fireworks extravaganza. It was broadcast on television and reached millions of Americans. And so America's symbol stands today, still holding high her torch. Visitors from all over the world take the ferry to Liberty Island to climb the spiral stairs and gaze from the windows of Liberty's crown. They wonder at the magnificent colossus of our modern age. Experts tell us with proper maintenance, and by replacing individual pieces of metal as they wear out, the Statue of Liberty should stand for centuries. But like freedom itself, she cannot be taken for granted. The great lady must be loved and cared for. As long as she lives in our hearts and minds, liberty will enlighten the world. That's it.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Bush. It is wonderful to see you as always. Once again, let's show our appreciation to First Lady Barbara Bush. A favorite feature of all of us, including First Lady Barbara Bush, is the video conference. It's a question and answer session with schools across the nation and worldwide participating with us today. We will now go to Texas Education Service Center Region 11, where Mrs. Linda McDonald will facilitate and moderate the Q&A session as we visit schools from across the United States and around the world. And a good morning and hello to Mrs. McDonald.
Good morning, all from Fort Worth, Texas. Our first question comes today from Miss Suffolk's class at Liberty Elementary School in Paradise Valley Schools, Phoenix, Arizona. Liberty Elementary, do you have a question for Miss Bush?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Can you hear us?
Hello, Miss Bush. My name is Nico, and
Can you hear us? I can hear you.
and I'm in the 5th grade. Miss Safik is my teacher, and Miss H my librarian. You have just read from the book entitled We Are 5th Graders from Liberty Elementary. What does the word liberty mean to you?
The word liberty mean to me? Liberty means the right to worship as we wish, the right to say what we want to say, and the right to freedom of religion, education, and the right that all people are equal. And freedom means so much more. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died so we Americans can have liberty. So thank you very, very much for that wonderful question.
Our next question comes from South Mountain Elementary School in Millburn, New Jersey. We do want to say a special greeting. We have the privilege of having Ellis Island National Park Ranger Melissa Magnuson-Kennedy there at South Mountain Elementary School, and she is in charge of education and distance learning at Ellis Island. So welcome to the National Park Ranger, and we'll throw this question to South Mountain Elementary School in Millburn, New Jersey.
Hi, my name is Melissa, like she mentioned, and I've also got Park Ranger Kathy with us today. And just wanted to briefly introduce the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. They are National Park Service sites. And we're very happy that Liberty is the focus of this year's Reading Discovery program. Of course, we've been hearing about the Statue of Liberty, and I wanted to share with you a couple things that I think are really special about the statue. As park rangers, of course, we tell the stories of America's special places, now over 400, and Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island being one of them. So the Statue of Liberty, I actually think it's really neat that it's, even though we call it the Statue of Liberty for short, it's actually the Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World. And I know that's kind of been mentioned in Lynn Curley's book, and so that's fabulous because I think it really helps to tell the story. The other thing I think is really neat is that the Statue of Liberty itself is a symbol, but worked into the statue itself are several other symbols. Some of the most well-known being the torch and the flame, the crown, and the tablets. I just wanted to share that with everyone. And then, of course, Ellis Island is also a part of the history of the Statue of Liberty. Of the 12 million immigrants who came through Ellis Island a century ago, they all saw the Statue of Liberty. They passed by her on the way to Ellis Island, where they would take tests to basically prove that they were healthy and prove that they had followed the rules. And so millions of immigrants really were welcomed into the United States 100 years ago at Ellis Island, and we tell those stories as well. In fact, one of the students here is actually going to add a comment about Ellis Island.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Sebastian, and I'm in the 5th grade. Miss Kirk is my teacher, and Mrs. Morling and Miss Licatisse are our librarians. Our class had the opportunity to visit Ellis Island during our unit on immigration. I was struck by the sacrifices made by the people who passed through Ellis Island as they immigrated to the United States.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Emily, and I'm also in the 5th grade. My teacher is Mrs. Huron. As my parents are from France, every time I see the Statue of Liberty, it reminds me of the bond that exists between France and the United States. It is not only a symbol of freedom, but also friendship. My question is, have you ever had the opportunity to visit Ellis Island or the Statue of Liberty?
Yes, I have been there. I visited and I climbed the staircase and I even signed my name on the wall and contributed to the refurbishing of the statue. And it sent chills down my back. It was so exciting. Thank you for your question.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Vivian, and I'm also in the 5th grade. My teacher is Mr. Mongan. My question is, what did you dream of becoming when you were a little girl?
What did I dream of when I was a little girl? I dreamed, I guess, of being a nurse. I had a wonderful mother and father, brothers and sisters, so I really didn't dream too much. I just loved my life, and I really can't. I'm 88. I can hardly remember what I dreamed of, but I had happy thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, South Mountain Elementary School, for your hosting the Ellis Island education experts. And let's pass the next question on to Bumpus Middle School in Hoover, Alabama. Miss Davidson's class in Bumpus Middle School. Your question?
I think your question was, did any of my family ever come through Ellis Island? And I'm embarrassed to tell you that I don't know that answer, but I suspect that I could find it on whatever that thing is where it says find out your ancestors. But I know that the Pierce side have been here for many, many years. He was not a direct descendant, but Franklin Pierce was a 6th cousin once removed by something or other, and that was way before the Statue of Liberty. And I don't know. I have to look that up, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that I don't know the answer.
Thank you, Bumpus Middle School, for your question. Let's move on to St. Thomas the Apostle School in West Hempstead, New York. St. Thomas, your question for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Mrs. Bush.
Hello.
My name is James Hopkins, and I'm in the 4th grade. Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Mulvihill are my teachers, and Miss Young is my librarian. My question is, why do you think that immigrants were amazed by the Statue of Liberty when they first saw it?
I'm sure they were. And you know, not too long ago, the President and I came back to America on the Queen Mary, and I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning because I was so eager to see the Statue of Liberty and see what they saw. And so I got up, tiptoed out, and stood on the deck. The fog was so deep I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but I still felt awe that I was standing where immigrants had come to this country and seen freedom for them in front of them. That's the best answer I can give you.
Thank you for your question, St. Thomas the Apostle. Let's move on. I believe we have 2 questions from Miss Richardson's class at Creekside Elementary School in Suffolk, Virginia. Miss Richardson's class.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is
Hello.
Bellamy McPhail. I'm in the 5th grade. Mrs. Landon is my teacher, and Mrs. Richardson is my librarian. My question is, if you could speak to any First Lady in history, who would it be and why?
It's such a good question. I've studied a lot of them. I suspect I would love to talk to Mrs. Roosevelt. She was the person who just said, we can't live with the office and our home together. And she had them build the West Wing and made the White House a home. And that it is a home, and I thank her for that. I'd love to talk to her. Yes, sir.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Javon Blackwell, and I'm in the 5th grade. Miss Landon is my teacher, and Miss Richardson is my librarian. My question is, what accomplishments as First Lady are you most proud of?
I'm not proud of anything, but I'm happy that I believe that thousands and thousands of Americans can read because of my foundation. We've given grants to people in every single state and the District of Columbia and Guam, and I'm very happy about that. I believe very strongly in family literacy. So maybe you could say I was proud of that. And I'm proud that my children, I've retired, and my children have now picked up the banner and are taking on literacy. That makes me, and my grandchildren, makes me very, very happy. So thank you for your question.
Great questions from Creekside Elementary. Let's move on to Totucket Valley Elementary School in Northford, Connecticut. Totucket, your question?
Hello, Miss Bush. My name is Izzo, and I'm in the 4th grade. Miss Aon is my teacher, and Miss Ryan is my librarian. My question is, did you have any fun being the First Lady, or was it just work?
Did I have any fun as First Lady, or was it just work? I had a lot of fun. I played tennis at 7 in the morning with Sandra Day O'Connor and Mrs. Potter Stewart. And I had a lot of very, very good friends. At Camp David, I took up golf for the first time when I was 60, which stood me in good stead later in life. But the main fun I had were friends. Faith, family, and friends are the most important thing to me. And of course, I read a lot. I really had fun. Thank you.
Great question. Let's, boys and girls, I know that you would want to know at our next school, Coulter Elementary School in Houston, Texas, we have the honor of having Miss Claire Frazier, who won a teaching award from the Consulate General of France in Houston. So we are very proud to have her class at Coulter Elementary School, Houston ISD in Houston, Texas. Do you have a question for Mrs. Bush?
Yes, we do.
Speak really loud, okay?
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Matthew Calman. My name is Matthew Calman, and I'm in 5th grade. Miss Frazier is my French teacher, and Miss Gray is my librarian. Mrs. Bush, I will ask the question in English, followed by it being asked in French. My question is, as a First Lady, you meet many influential people. Who is the one person who influenced you the most? En tant que première dame, vous répondrez beaucoup de personnes influentes. Quelle personne vous a...
Who influenced me the most, the one person? Is that your question? I studied French for 7 years, but we never spoke like you do. We just read, and it was a waste of time not to speak too. But who influenced me the most? Probably my precious, brilliant, wonderful husband. He influenced me the most in life. And he encouraged me to do things that I might otherwise not have done, to learn, to help others, to do good things. So I would say my husband. Thank you for your question.
Great question from Coulter Elementary. Let's move on to Mac Ben Jr. Elementary School in Suffolk School District, Suffolk, Virginia. Miss Petrie's class, your question for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Talia Bonte, and I'm in 4th grade. Mrs. Boyd and Miss Petrie are my teachers, and Mrs. Spencer is my librarian. My question is, what was your favorite place you visited as First Lady?
That's such a good question because we visited all over the world. So I could say Paris. We had wonderful visits in France, but I'm tempted to tell the truth, which is China. We lived there for 2 years and we went back, and I had loved living in the People's Republic of China and learned a lot there and had lots of friends there. So I think China maybe. Although I did love my visit to Versailles and the dinner in the Hall of Mirrors, and we had some wonderful times there. Thank you for your question.
And we're going to return to Texas, Buda Elementary School and Hayes Consolidated ISD in Buda, Texas. Your question for Mrs. Bush, please.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. I'm Shelby. Our teacher is Dr. F, and our librarian is Miss Vita. Our question is, how did you think a First Lady can help to improve people's lives around the world?
How did I think the First Lady could change people's lives around the world? Is that your question?
Yes,
if that's your question, my answer is by setting a good example, by being a good mother, by being a good teacher, by being a good person, by working very, very hard to do something good every single day. And that's what I asked my staff to do. I said, please set up something that will help somebody every single day. But I think example is the best way you can change the world.
Wonderful question. Okay, we're going to move on to Brewer Community School in Brewer, Maine. Your question for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Jordan. And my name is Lynn. We are in 3rd grade. Mrs. McInnes and Mrs. Hall are our teachers, and Mrs. Holyoke is our librarian.
Our question is, how did you become involved with creating family literacy education programs?
How did I become involved
in creating literacy education programs?
In creating literacy programs? Well, it was very easy because I spent one summer knowing George was going to run for president, hoping he'd win, knowing I should have a cause. And I thought all the things I worry about would be better if more people could read, write, and comprehend. And I worry about drugs, and I worry about crime, and I worry about hunger, and I worry about people not being able to get jobs. And I still worry about those things. And I still work hard to see that everybody has the right, they do have the right to learn to read, but that they learn to read. And you all are so lucky. You're my school, Brewer, as you know. I love your school. I love your teachers. I love coming up to visit you, and I will come this summer again. But you are my friends. So you're very lucky. You have great teachers, and we love you. Thank you very, very much. How are you?
We're good.
I'm glad to see you.
And we're going to move on to our next campus. We're going to come back to Texas, Jefferson Elementary School in Temple ISD in Temple, Texas. Your question for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Alexis, and I'm in the 4th grade. My teachers are Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Maxwell. My question for you is, what were your favorite storybooks growing up, and what is your favorite food?
What were my favorite storybooks? Well, we had a whole series of books called My Book House, which covered everything. I loved that and would spend a lot of time looking through it early on at pictures and then reading, and had poetry and wonderful stories about knights and kings, and it was great. But my favorite books were books about dogs. A lot of my friends loved horses, but I loved dogs, and I read all the Albert Payson to Hume books about dogs. And I still love dogs, as you all know. I'm sort of a doggy person. Thank you for your question.
Lots of great questions this morning. Can I ask that all campuses double check and make sure your microphones are on mute? And we're going to move on to Ms. Bender's class at Pleasant Hill Elementary School in Osceola County Schools, Kissimmee, Florida. Pleasant Hill Elementary, your question for Ms. Bush, please.
Hello, Mrs. Bush. My name is Gabriela Mateo, and I am in the 3rd grade. Mrs. Berdner and Mrs. Jang are my teachers, and Mrs. White is my librarian. My question is, are there favorite books that you believe will help prepare students for the future?
That's a very good question. And of course, I think the Bible, but I'm sure there are other books, that the Quran and other books that are very important for teaching boys and girls about the future. But I think if you know about the Constitution and you know about all the people who have worked so hard to bring freedom to our country, and there are many, many books about the Civil War and about the Revolutionary War and World War I and World War II. There are just a lot of very good books out there that will tell you about people who loved their country so and loved freedom so that they were willing to fight to save it for us. And that's why you and I are safe today, because we had people who really cared for their country. Thank you for your great question.
And coming back to Texas, we're going to move on to A.R. Turner Elementary School in Willis Independent School District, Willis, Texas. A.R. Turner, your question for Mrs. Bush, please.
Hello, Ms. Bush. My name is Colin Utek, and I am in the 3rd grade. Ms. Shimshak is my teacher, and Ms. Carter is my librarian. My question is, as an author, please discuss how you chose the titles of books you personally wrote.
Well, I'd love to tell you I chose the titles, but I didn't. The publisher did. And they sound sort of conceited, I think, it seemed to me. But she said, no, we want to sell the books, Mrs. Bush, so they chose the titles. But I loved writing my books, and this is something you ought to do. I've kept a diary for years and years and years, so you can write a book, because you've got it all written down there anyway. You can write about what you think and what you feel. You've got to be sure that no little brothers and little sisters or mothers and fathers read your diary. That's very important. But if you write a diary, you will be surprised how easy it is to write a book. And of course, my dogs wrote books, but they're much smarter than I am. Anyway, that's how I chose the titles. The publisher chose them. They said it would sell better. Darn it. Thank you for asking.
Great questions. Okay, we're going to move on. We're actually going to leave the United States and travel to Canada, to Deux-Montagnes, Quebec, Canada, Mountain View Elementary School. Your questions, I believe you have 2 questions for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Miss Bush. My name is Nicholas Moscato, and I am in the 6th grade. Madame Bergeron is my teacher, and Miss Karen is my librarian. My question is, what was it like to live in the White House?
It was wonderful. Your mother would tell you this. It was to live in a house where every time a light bulb went out, you could call someone and they rush up and change the light bulb, when everything's taken care of for you. But it was wonderful because we were living amidst great history, and you could feel the presence of other presidents and visitors from the other countries. We love Canada, and we feel very much like Canada's like a brother to us, or a sister. Maybe I should say sister in the New World. But in any case, we love Canada, and it was great to live in the White House. Like home. Next question.
Hello, Ms. Bush. My name is Nina Giles, and I'm in the 6th grade. Madame Bergeron is my teacher, and Miss Karen is my librarian. My question is, how did you feel to have both your husband and son be President of the United States?
How did I feel to have both my husband and my son be President of the United States? It was awesome. I really, when I married George Bush, I never thought he'd be president, and certainly never thought that rascal of a son of mine would be president. But I'm so proud of both of them, and they made huge sacrifices, which they wouldn't say was a sacrifice, but I know it was. And it's wonderful, but it's very hard for a wife or a mother to see your husband and son criticized, and in most cases unfairly. And that, of course, is what a mother and wife would say, but I really felt that way. I was very proud of my husband and son. And I was very proud of the Canadian prime ministers who were great friends at that time also. Brian Mulroney and other, my memory's leaving me right now, but I can't quite remember who was prime minister when George W. was president. But I know they were friends and they worked together. And that's what brothers and sisters should do.
Thank you for our questions from Mountain View Elementary. We're going to move on to Ms. Matthews' class at Cleveland Elementary School in Fayette County Schools, Fayetteville, Georgia. Cleveland Elementary School, your questions for Mrs. Bush.
Hello, Miss Bush. My name is Molly Pate, and I am in the 5th grade. Miss Nail is my teacher, and Miss Gilzine is my librarian. My question is, what do you think is the most important life skill of being a First Lady?
What is the most important
Life skill.
life skill of being First Lady? I guess having a tough skin so you don't mind being criticized. I think the same skill that your mother and your aunts and sisters have is just being able to get along with people and to support your family. You know, I always felt like I was not elected president. I just went along for the ride. But my job was to see that the house was comfortable and wonderful for George Bush. It was a home. And I worked very hard to see that that was true. So it was just that was my job, truthfully, was to make a home for the president. I was not president, surprisingly enough, but I wasn't. Thank you for your question. You're so good looking, all of you. You are.
Aren't they? They are wonderful. We do want to say a special thank you to the French Diplomatic Education Cooperative Program officers who helped us get connected to our final campus, Lycée Jean-Baptiste Carreau in Douai, France. So we're going to turn it over to our last 2 questions from France before we return to the Bush Library.
Whoa.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Hello. Bonjour. Good morning, Mrs. Bush.
Good morning.
Good morning, Houston. We wish you a happy new year. We are very excited to take part in today's lecture, and we are so honored to share this special moment with you, madam. We are here in Douai, in the north of France, 1 hour away from Paris, London, and Brussels. Our high school is called Lycée Corot. This man was famous in the 19th century painter. You can see one of these paintings in Houston in the Museum of Fine Arts, Orpheus and Eurydice.
How? English is a very important language for all of us between the 10th and 12th grade, and our interest in the American culture is great. Your invitation is a wonderful opportunity to continue and to give a new impulse to our friendship, which is so ancient, even older than this famous symbol of liberty that everybody knows. We hope sincerely to step into a lasting partnership with your beautiful state. Thank you for welcoming us.
Ah, thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Bush. As a woman, do you see the Statue of Liberty as a woman or as a symbol?
Do I see the Statue of Liberty as a woman? Is that,
Yeah, or as a symbol.
or as a symbol? That's a good question. I see it as both. I see it as a woman, but I really more see it as a symbol. I see it as a welcoming symbol, and I see it as a huge bond between France and the United States. For years we've been friends, and you have defended us, and we've come to your defense, and we are so grateful to you. I cannot believe that your country raised the money to build the largest statue in the world to represent freedom for us. I think that's wonderful, and we are friends. Most important things in life to me are faith, family, and friends, and we're friends with France. I remember my husband being very devoted to President Mitterrand. Very devoted. Thank you for your question.
What does the Statue of Liberty represent for the Americans today?
What does the Statue of Liberty represent for Americans today?
Today, the Statue of Liberty represents to Americans freedom. It represents welcoming people from other countries to our country. And I hope it represents friendship for the world. But I hope it represents welcome. I think that's what people think. Thank you so much for your question. God bless you all.
You're welcome.
Your English is very good. Très bien.
And I'll ask all campuses to please mute their microphones as we return back to Mr. Wright at the Bush Library to conclude our program.
All right, Mrs. Bush, thank you so much for being a part of our day. You look incredible, and it's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Wow. All right. The miracle of communications. And I have to say, I hope that later in life that you remember this moment again when a First Lady of the United States, you got to hear the answers. And the thing I've always liked about First Lady Barbara Bush, she keeps it real. That's what I love about her answers. So anyway, it is such an honor every year to work with her on this program as well. All right, please make welcome our award-winning author who will share a few words. Another honor to speak to an author with an award-winning book. And please make welcome again with a few comments about the book Liberty. Here's Lynn Curley. Lynn?
Good morning, Mrs. Bush. Good morning to my friends here at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library, and good morning to all of you out there. My name is Lynn Curley, and it is my very great pleasure to be here today. A few years ago, I wrote a book about one of our most iconic American monuments. Liberty is the story of the Statue of Liberty, why it was built, how it was built, what it meant to the people who made it, and what it means to us. I'm thrilled and honored that my book was chosen for today's exciting event. I write and illustrate books for kids. People often seem fascinated to meet someone who actually does this kind of work for a living. Invariably, I have to explain that I don't do bunnies or kitties or books for toddlers, but that my books are serious, nonfiction, informational books for older kids about serious subjects. It is my job to make my books as informative and as entertaining, and yes, as beautiful as I possibly can. When I was invited to speak today, I thought that you might be interested in learning how a book such as Liberty comes to be made. Liberty was my 5th book and my 2nd book about a great American landmark. The year before, I had written and illustrated a book about the carving of the presidential portraits on Mount Rushmore, and since it was well received and doing well in the marketplace, I proposed to my editor a project about the Statue of Liberty. I was delighted that my idea was accepted, and now I had a very pleasant job ahead of me. First, I started by doing research, reading every book and article that I could find about the statue. I've always been interested in architecture and engineering, and so I was particularly fascinated by the technical process. How on earth did such an enormous and complicated structure come to be? Since I lived in New York City at that time, after I absorbed the history and the technical details, I made several trips to Liberty Island. I walked around the site. I sat and stared at the statue from many different angles. I studied the exhibits in the statue's museum. I walked up the narrow spiral staircase to the crown several times, peered out at the great city across New York Harbor, and in this way the statue became very familiar to me. Then, after I had mastered the facts and absorbed the experience of the statue, it was time to sit down to write my book. Liberty was written in 1998, right at the moment when people were beginning to get really comfortable with working on computers. Liberty was the first of my books to be written on a word processor. Until then, I had written my books on an obsolete, antique kind of machine that many of you may never have even seen, a typewriter. There is no doubt that the computer makes part of the work of writing easier and less laborious, but writing is still extremely hard work. No matter how carefully you organize your thoughts and compose your sentences, if you really try, you can always make it better, using a more accurate word or coming up with a more artful turn of phrase. If I can turn out one finished page of writing per day, I consider that a day well spent. At that speed, the work of writing the first draft of a book like Liberty might take about a month. But no matter how you slice it, writing is not really fun, but painting is fun. And after the writing is done, the real fun begins. When a book is planned, I will know in advance the number of pages that it will have. So when the writing is finished, I will know how many pages will be available for pictures. To show my editor how the book will look, I make a handmade version of the book called a dummy, with the pages of text in place and sketches to show my proposed illustrations. Once the dummy is approved, I will spend approximately a year making the paintings that will be used as illustrations. You can see 4 of these original paintings here behind us on stage. After my work is done, the book enters production. First comes the editing process. My editor may make suggestions for changes or deletions or additions to the text. Fact checkers in the publishing house may find mistakes that must be fixed. Sometimes there are sentences that can be improved and points of grammar that need tweaking. And once all of these technical details are done and everything is just so, the paintings are photographed, the book is given to the art director, who has the very important job of choosing the font for the text, determining the layout of the pages, and it is the art director who designs the cover and the title pages using the images that I have painted. Now the book goes to the printer. The publisher tries to find the least expensive printer for each book, and today most books are printed in the Far East. From start to finish, the entire process may take 2 full years, from the initial idea to the actual publishing date when I finally hold a finished book in my hands. Hopefully by that time I will have written another book and will be hard at work painting the illustrations for that one. When Liberty was published in 2000, I was invited to have a book signing event at the statue itself. It was a great thrill to be signing my books right there in the bookshop at the statue's base. I have had the rare privilege of making several books about some of America's most important and iconic landmarks. I need to thank my editors and publishers and my readers as well for this wonderful opportunity. Writing and painting are solitary tasks. In most jobs, there are other people around to interact with you during the workday, but for my work, I sit in my studio for hours at a time at the computer or stand at my easel alone with only my thoughts, my ideas, and my research materials. Most communication today is done online by editors and publishers, so the work itself can be actually kind of lonely. Writers and artists have very little interaction with other people while they're actually doing their work. So it is a great pleasure today for me to be here in Texas away from my studio, hearing my words repeated to me by Mrs. Bush and by these wonderful kids on stage here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curley. As we continue and start to wrap up our program for you today, we're going to welcome a quartet called the Aggie-Nizers. They're of Texas A&M University Singing Cadets. The quartet members are Michael Duty, Taylor Thompson, Ivan Dixon, and Alejandro Oliveras. It's a pleasure to have you join us today as they're going to sing two favorite songs of theirs, PB&J and America the Beautiful. Please make welcome the Aggie-Nizers.
You've got hoagies and heroes or ham on whole wheat, grilled cheese, BLTs, pita bread stuffed with meat, tuna fish and egg salad, sloppy joes and pornini, and don't forget gyro, French dip, or crostini. Mamma mia!
Luigi!
But the greatest of sandwiches, king of them all, no offense to dear Dad's veggie burger supreme,
Is a sandwich preferred any time, night or day? The American legend, good old PBJ. Oh, I'm peanut butter and you are jelly, and we're so happy on our little piece of bread. I remember the first time that I saw you sitting across the cupboard with your other jelly friends. You're so sweet and I am chunky. You're so fat, well I'm working on that, 'cause I'm peanut butter and you are jelly, and we're so happy on our little piece of bread.
I'm a grape and strawberry, but you're raspberry,
That's my favorite kind. Please forgive me for my stint with honey. I looked on the label and not what was inside. You're so sweet and I am chunky. You're a little fat, well I'm working on that, 'cause I'm peanut butter and you are jelly, and we're so happy on our little piece of bread. I'm so glad that I discovered you in the cupboard. I hope you're glad. From now on, we'll be stuck together. But what could be better than being stuck with you? 'Cause you're so sweet and I am chunky. You're a little fat, well I'm working on that, 'cause I'm peanut butter and you are jelly, and we're so happy on our little piece of spread. Together we're so happy on our little piece of spread. Together we're so happy on our little piece of bread. Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy goods with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot's dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shining sea.
Thank you to the Aggienizers. Special thanks for contributions to the program by First Lady Barbara Bush, author and artist Lynn Curley, Ellis Island National Park Ranger Melissa Magnuson Kennedy, the reading partners, which I'd like to highlight. I will tell you, it takes a lot to sit up here for this amount of time, and I'm sure they were nervous reading in front of all of their friends. But to Garrison, Cabrini, Gabby, Pierce, Lily, Taylor, Brandon, and Casey, you guys did an awesome job. Give it up for your reading. Special thanks, of course, going to the singing cadets, the French Diplomatic Education Cooperative Program officers, the distance learning specialists, students, teachers, and administrators worldwide for joining us. Reading always provides you with exciting new discoveries. You can find a reading partner. Have fun reading today. We ask that you join us again next year. Follow what your teachers say do as you start to leave this auditorium. Travel safely to wherever you're going. And again, thank you for making us a part of your Tuesday. It's an honor to have you here at the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum. Have a great day.